Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show to talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Sweet Tooth. Great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, let's start off with our opening where we are catching up with Birdie. This is before she got before her and Becky got in contact with each other. Bear got in contact with each other at the end of last season. What I can only assume she's in Iceland because that's where they originally found the virus. So I guess she was hoping that if she could go back there, because Judy said she left like a couple years ago and just never came back. So we have no idea how long, but she's been up there, I guess, trying to search and find the exact spot all these years later. She was following some, I don't know whether she was drawing it from memory of trying to remember where exactly the virus was discovered, but she ended up, no, because it almost looked like it was like an older map, like it was like a treasure map or something. So I don't know. Maybe it's not even Iceland. Maybe it's like somewhere else. Because isn't Iceland supposed to be like really green and Greenland supposed to be really icy? Because isn't that supposed to be like the oxymoron of it all? Like how like backwards that is. I don't remember. I thought it was Iceland, but maybe it was maybe it was Antarctica, but I could have sworn it was Iceland. Either way. Maybe she's here, maybe that is a completely different thing. Like, she isn't necessarily looking for the virus there, but she somehow knows there's a connection to this place. Because she ends up she ends up checking down below a cavern, and in a crevice, and ends up finding, it seems like a ship that, crashed a long time ago. I guess that got sunk beneath all the snow and ice. And aboard it, she finds the journal of someone, and on top of that person is growing a purple flower, which obviously the purple flower signifies the sick. So this virus is obviously, we know it's a very, very, very old, because I think that journal was early 1900s. So who this person is, where did this virus originate from, we don't know. But Birdie got the journal, but suddenly the thing she's on immediately kind of starts dragging her back up. And when she gets back to the top, no one's there. But she does look, and they didn't look like boot prints to me. Maybe they were, but having looked at them once, I was like, wait, those kind of look like those could be hoof prints, but maybe I'm wrong. Part of me wonders, could it be like something or someone was out there? And if it was a something, part of me wonders, could it be a hybrid? Or could it be something that's connected to the hybrids that's maybe even older? Maybe there's something there that is kind of like the ancestor to the hybrids, that where they kind of come from DNA-wise comes from this creature. Maybe it's kind of like a thing of they are kind of almost like a abominable snowman or Yeti type of situation. Like maybe it's something like that. Who knows? Cause whoever it was yanked her back up. But I don't know why they would. It's not like she was in danger, but they yanked her back up. You'd assume they were trying to get something from her, but then they just stopped and left. Why? That is the $1 million question. So since we're all kind of on that subject, let's kind of tie that in with the end of the episode, where we're picking up with Becky and her conversation, Becky and Birdie's conversation, finding out hey, this is what's going on. This is who I am. Obviously Richard's gone, sadly. Finding out about Gus. Well, how much does Gus know? It's he knows everything, maybe, because even she doesn't really know how much of it Gus fully processed. It's a lot that went over his head, so he understood some of it, but not fully all of it. And I think for her, it's she was probably hoping that maybe one day Richard could have explained everything to her, and he wanted to, but he died before he could. And she can't be there to kind of make him feel better about it, Because she also doesn't know what Richard taught him. That's also the thing. She's been so disconnected from this, so she doesn't know what Richard might have told him. Richard kind of told him nothing, really, So it turns out she had actually left a tape to him, which I love. Becky being like, what's a cassette tape? And Judy having to explain it, because she picked up a vinyl record being like, is this it? It's no. She's like, is it like a thumb drive? It's yeah, no, but I was like, that, I mean, it makes sense, because Becky's 15 or 16, so it's yeah, cassettes predate you, so it makes sense, I mean, you were fairly young when the world fell apart anyway, so of course you wouldn't. You were 5 when the world fell apart, 5 or 6 when the world fell apart, so it makes sense why you were young at the time anyway, so something like that's already antiquated would be even more antiquated in the apocalypse, so. But they ended up finding the tape, and Judy sacrificed herself to make sure that Bear could get away. I love that she has like the claw. I thought it was like, okay, you're just going to mainly use it for like making sure you're able to cling to the roof as you're getting away. But I thought it was sweet, Judy saying like, right, one of us needs to go live our lives. Like, I'm an adult, but you're a teen. Go live like a teenager's life. Go live your life to the fullest, and it was nice meeting you, Becky. I thought that was a beautiful thing. And her going out locked and loaded with the flamethrower. Cause you heard it go on for a while, so it's like, because as long as you hear that flamethrower, that means Judy's still out there kicking some ass. But eventually it stops, and you hear some gunshots inside the house, so I can only assume like they backed her into the house and they finished her off. Because we heard like one or two more gunshots, and then it was over, because the rest of the house was like on fire. So I guess she was probably trying to burn everything so they wouldn't get access to it. But they might have been able to like put out the fire beforehand. But luckily Bear got away. Tussled with one of the last men and ended up clawing him in the face. I was like, I'm glad that can be used for offense like that too. Well, because they had weaponry when like she was with the with her crew, like they were using weapons, like, so I don't think she really used the claws last season. Not unless that's something she just made or something. I just don't remember her using those last season, but maybe I'm misremembering. Either way, she managed to get away with the tape. Once again, we don't know what's on that tape. Once again, maybe it's her explaining everything, or maybe her kind of just what a personal message she is leaving for Gus. So with that kind of taken care of, we circle. Well, let's finish up there, because there's actually a little bit more at the end where we see Birdie's got all these pictures. They look like hand-drawn things, and we see someone in front of like a cavern or something. We don't know what it is. What her whole situation, like, you assume it's about some cure, maybe for the sick. Maybe it has something about uncovering the secrets of the hybrids. Maybe therein lies the cure, the secrets of the cure. But we don't fully know what Birdie's things are, what it is exactly she's doing. But we know it's got to be connected in some regards to a cure, the sick, and hybrids. But either way, we catch up with Dr. Singh. He ended up injecting Ronnie with the her latest dose, because she was tripping. Because I thought, like, when we got Nancy, I was like, oh, is this going to be a nightmare? But it's like, oh, the way it played, I was like, okay, no, it's just the day her and Addie moved into that neighborhood. But then it turns into a nightmare, because Nancy's like, oh yeah, this is where Trixie killed me, and you and Addie covered it up, but their time together was so limited, and obviously she's like asking, what happened, and did he have to go through with it for the secret sauce, and he's like, yeah. They both been through it. It's that sad thing of, yes, like what he's doing could lead to a cure for a lot of people, but he first and foremost, he even said it. It comes first and foremost. My wife comes first, and it's actually really sad, because later on, Addie says it like, I'm not a bad guy. At the end of the day, he's just a guy trying to protect the woman he loves, and by doing that, I'm also potentially saving the world. It also means you have to work with a guy like General Abbott, who's done some terrible things. He's not a good guy. And who knows? He made it clear, like, he's going to be the one that dictates who gets the cure, who's worthy of it, and who isn't. And it's like, who are you to decide that? Because for him, it's like, I'm going to kind of restore humanity, but I'm going to make us, only the best of the best survive. Almost like a survival of the fittest. Only those probably willing to fall in line behind him. We learned next to nothing about him last season, so this season might be the season we learn about his past, him and the last man, because even the narrator says this is the story of the last men. And so it's like, right, the ones who are, who hurt us, but also the ones who are trying to save us. So the last men being, like, I think Birdie being on the side of, hey, trying to save us. I think that also includes Jeopard. Whereas, like, Abbott and his people are, but maybe in his own twisted way, he believes, hey, I'm doing good, even though I have to do a lot of bad to do that good. Since I'm on the Abbott subject really quickly, he is putting Addie in a very complicated spot. You have 3 days to kind of come up with a cure. Your wife is not getting another dose in that time frame, letting that be your motivation. Because, like, yeah, if your wife dies, then that means I get to kill you. Which, obviously, he doesn't want to, but it's like, I'll go and find another doctor if I have to. It's like, not too many of those running around. You killed one of the last ones. To be fair, she ran away from you and didn't want to do this anymore because she'd probably been doing it for years. What Addie's having to do now, he's only had to do it once, but the doctor he was replacing last season, she probably had to do it a lot, and it just finally wore down her like conscience. Like you can only justify it so long before it causes issues in you, you know. So, but Abbott ends up meeting up with some guy named, was it Dutch? And I'm wondering, like, you know, because we haven't really gotten a hierarchy in the world, like, now that the society has failed. But that dude said he was kind of like a representative. I think he's one of 4 pillars. I think it's kind of like, if you've ever watched Into the Badlands, basically there were multiple leaders, different groups in the apocalypse. And I think that's what it is. Like, there might be like 4 leaders. At least, and maybe in the entirety of the U.S., but only in maybe a fraction of the U.S., who knows. But it seems like Abbott has some kind of deal with them. He's trying to bring a proposal to them, but they want nothing to do with him. Even the dude Dutch being like, no matter what you do, you will never be one of us. It almost feels like that's an invitation for Abbott to kill one, if not all of you, and kind of run things himself. But the fact is, even he won't, like, even he kind of falls in line a little bit when it comes to them, because for him it's like, what I'm proposing will save the world, but like, why he needs their backing, because I guess even if he has the last man, he needs their support, because these 4 leaders, because like I said, I think Dutch, he's there as the representative representing all of them, but I think he's one of the leaders too. So because they said like the 3 others, so I'm assuming, because Dutch said, yeah, we voted on it and we are kind of going negatory on you. Probably because no one wants to be associated with like everything. Because maybe they know Abbott from the past, and maybe they all went their separate ways. Abbott's done his, and they look at him as such an extremist. They want nothing to do with him. We don't know. But Abbott's saying at the very least, when they see what I've got planned, they'll come begging. They'll come crawling back, begging to be a part of it. So kind of let Dutch go off and do his thing, and kind of pass on the conversation that he had with Abbott to the others. So because they were all busy because the new wave has come. Because we never really got a real idea of how drastic things are. The way Abbott kind of put it, it's like, yeah, 98% of the population is dead. You know, those are like leftover numbers. I have not seen the leftovers, but I mean, I've seen the leftovers. I just never saw it in its entirety. I want to say I only ever saw season 1. There are 3 seasons. I need to rewatch that show from the beginning and watch that, because I mean, I heard it's not. I mean, for what I saw of it, I really enjoyed it. But my point of going on that diatribe, I want to say, like, wasn't the whole point like, or was it a flip? I don't remember. I can't remember. I think it was like, I can't remember if it was like 90% of the world, 90+% of the world got raptured or disappeared, and then like 7% was left behind, or was it like, no, only 7 or so percent, 3% or whatever ended up. I don't remember. I might have that backwards. It's been so long since I've seen The Leftovers, so I could be completely mistaken. I just wasn't expecting like that large of a number. I mean, even to the point that, yeah, Albuquerque is down to a few hundred people now because of the latest wave. It's killed even more. He's like, yeah, there's like 36 people that died just this morning because of this new wave, as they call it. What was it, like the Doomsday strain, or Doom strain is what they called it? Which Abbott was like, oh, cute name. But either way, circling back, obviously Gus is getting a little more familiar. We focus on him and Wendy. She's associating him with all the other hybrids there, and kind of learning a little bit of like, yeah, most hybrids can't talk, but some of them were. Because at first I was like, oh, because I was thinking like some of them that was actually like talking verbally. I was like, oh, could it be that Wendy's hearing them this way, like they're communicating to Wendy and she's hearing it like they're talking normally, but they're not. But it is that some of them actually can talk. She says that some of them just haven't learned how to, others just don't have vocal cords at all, so they can't talk. There's one, was it Haley, the bird girl, who like swears? It's like, yeah, when she's screeching like that means she's swearing. And Gus is like, wow, she swears a lot, but gets introduced to the rest of everyone. Once again, some of them who can talk, some of them who can't, and obviously learning a little bit more about each other. He says that obviously he doesn't have a mom, he doesn't have a dad. The person he was with is Jeopard, which he had a nightmare about Jeopard, thinking that, you know, it's like, oh, Jeopard died. And it's like, well, he's witnessed, you know, that death firsthand, because, you know, he lost his pubba, Richard, and he now thinks he lost the big man. So I wonder, did Amy teach Wendy? Because Wendy made that point of like, oh, like who taught? They were talking about like, oh, who taught you how to speak? And Gus was like, nobody. I mean, we saw like his first words were like pubba. So I think it was it was never clear whether or not Richard taught him or not. I mean, probably helped expand his vocabulary, but he kind of talked on his own. We never really found out whether or not Wendy's in that same boat or did Amy teach her. Escaping this place won't be easy. Bobby has tried digging, but the concrete runs so deep underground, there's like no getting around that. So they got to try and find another way. And so their plan is to like, hey, we need to get to a radio. Well, one of them came up with the idea like, oh, let's go to a radio. Like maybe Amy might be out there listening on the radio, so maybe she can come and rescue them. So Wendy knows how to operate it. So they ultimately got Bobby to dig up and go over there, get the key. He brought it back, and they're all struggling to get the door unlocked. Gus and Wendy go to the radio, and along the way, they end up finding out about Roy and find out that he was killed, which is kind of all a sad. It's almost interesting because I almost thought this was going to be like that parachute guy last season where Jeopard and Becky looked at each other and were like, yeah, you're right, Gus, we were totally messing with you just so that Gus, to protect his innocence so he wouldn't see the guys. But Gus was trying to do the same thing for Wendy, being like, do not look. I thought he wasn't going to say anything and he'd keep that to himself, but Wendy saw Roy's dead body, which is heartbreaking. And before they could even like contact Amy again, she got a message out once, but before she could do it again, I want to say it was Johnny grabbed him again, and he ended up taking the keys back, and he also put like something on Bobby. So I guess like if Bobby tries to maybe start digging, I don't know if like it'll set an alarm off or whatever. So I also thought it was interesting too when two of the last men were looking for the key. They're like, "Where's the key?" Oh, Johnny must have it. It's like, who? Oh, you mean that hippie guy? Yeah, it's like, no, that guy's really scary, which I was like, that's an interesting line of dialogue, where it's like, wait, Johnny? I mean, because Johnny, we haven't really had much, Johnny seems kind of like whatever, especially when Abbott was like, kind of put a little more force behind it, and it's like, it seemed like Johnny, especially because he doesn't present himself as a scary dude, so why is he considered scary then? We've never seen anything of it, but it feels like that line of dialogue is super important. That is like, yeah, that guy's scary. Like, what does that mean? Like, he might be he might be more of a psychopath than we kind of give him credit for. Maybe that's what the implication is. I don't know. But when the time came to tell the rest of everybody about Roy, Wendy was going to tell them the truth, but Gus told them like, no, Roy escaped. And that's the hard thing to say, like whether or not Wendy would be right to tell them the truth or whether Gus would be. Because Gus lying to them like this, and as he was told, like, hey, sometimes it's okay to lie, but, Wendy comes from the perspective of like, no, my mom never lied. So that's the complicated thing, because knowing the truth would make them so disheartened, but if they believe Roy's still alive and out there, then that keeps their hope alive and keeps them willing to escape. I mean, because if you tell them the truth, like, oh, the longer we stay here, the more likely we are to get killed, it could make them panic, and that can make getting away harder, and might even like make them like disenfranchised, because it might be like, hey, if we try to escape, they'll kill us. Well, if we stay here, they'll kill us. Like, we're screwed either way, and I don't know. It's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see. Like, eventually, they are probably going to find out the truth about Roy. We'll have to wait and see. It's going to be a matter of, is it going to be Wendy having to tell them the truth after Gus lied? Or will Gus have to like fess up? Or will they end up stumbling across Roy's body? We have no idea. But Addie has Gus brought to him, and it's like, all right, so talk to me. I need to know stuff about you. Well, Gus finally talks when it's like, all right, like, you could end up like, I don't want to cut you open. I need to find out, like, I need to get answers from you. And he's like, all right, yes, I'm 10 years old. My name is Gus. And it's like, what did you do to Roy? And he's like, Roy, I didn't know he had a name. It's like, yes, because it actually ties in interestingly with that Well, Ronnie, or at least when they were introduced, like, to Nancy and stuff, Ronnie said, oh, we couldn't do the whole animal kid thing. And obviously Nancy was like, yeah, at this point in time, they're calling them hybrids, you know. So I thought that was interesting. It seemed like that was their reservation. I mean, they kind of put it off for so long, and now with the whole hybrid thing happening, they never had kids because of it, so... I guess the reason why I found that so interesting is just because it's not like Addie's like anti-hybrids or whatever, but it just seemed, I mean, I guess it's like the last thing with the paranoia around, especially that community, the way they handled like the illness and everything and trying to avoid the next wave and all that. It does make you wonder what that community is now post Addie and Rainey's being swooped up by General Abbott. But either way, it just, I don't know. Maybe that disconnect is also... I mean, he had his reservations about doing it regardless, but maybe that disconnect makes it not easier, but makes it a lot more... I feel weird even saying the word palatable for Addie because it does tear him up on the inside because he doesn't want to do it anymore. But he thinks if he can talk to Gus more and more, it can get him the information he needs to be able to find a cure to all this. Because for him, it's like, I don't want to cut you open, Gus. I want what's inside your head. Because Gus explains like, hey, I'm 10 years old, but he's like, that doesn't make any sense. The virus only came about 9 years ago. It's like, well, yeah, because Gus predates the virus. So because we know, whereas hybrids were all born, Gus was made in a lab. So that's also because Addie was like, yeah, when we did a scan of you, we noticed that you don't have a belly button, which obviously means nothing to Gus. But it's like, oh, like, what's your father? It's like, well, I don't have a father. I don't have a mother. And it's like, he'll probably eventually have to explain it to Addie, like, I was made in a lab in an experiment. Once again, he doesn't fully grasp it himself, so it's hard to really, for him to elaborate that to Addie, but we'll see how that kind of plays out. He also brought up the whole thing of, like, seeing Richard again, being like, yeah, I fell into those, like, flowers, the purple flowers that come up because of the sick, and it's like, yeah, I talked to my dad, and it was almost like I saw him on the other side, or maybe I saw him in my head, and we talked. I mean, that place also gave him a vision of General Abbott, which, like, why would he be able to see that? Because he wouldn't know who Abbott is. So he had never seen Abbott before, so why would that register? And so there is something to that, which Addie does want to test that more, and we do see, because of Ronnie being sick, there are purple flowers growing, which he could use against Gus. Granted, he's only got like a couple days to make this happen because, like, Addit was saying like he was only going to be away for like a couple days, like maybe 3 days or something like that. So he has to make a move now because if he doesn't, I mean, for one, he needs to make sure he prepares. He needs another cure for Ronnie before it's too late. But he thinks if he can get through using Gus, he can probably like find a permanent cure rather than the temporary one he's been making for Ronnie. So luckily, because of this, Gus was able to buy them more time. And it was also a really sweet thing. The turtle boy, he was able to get him a light because it's like, yeah, he would stay locked up in the basement a lot of times because of his parents. I don't know if that's like a thing of, oh, they did that maliciously. I don't think so. It probably had to be a thing of like he would have to hide a lot just from people. Maybe that's what the implication was in that regard. Because it's like, yeah, like his parents would play music a lot, and he sings the Golden Girls theme song. And obviously it's not a song that Gus is familiar with. Hasn't had a chance to kind of bust out his dancing moves that we saw in episode 2 of last season. So, but when the food comes in, they end up finding Dog in there, and for Gus, it lifts his spirits because that means Jeopard's alive. But for Wendy, she can smell Amy on it, so it means Jeopard and Amy are together, like, we're getting out of here. So it's definitely gonna, I can only assume that means Amy did hear Wendy's message, or, you know, because where we left off in the season finale, you could tell that Amy was listening into the Last Men radio frequencies, just trying to find out where they were and kind of like narrow it down as where the kids could be, or at the very least learn the Last Men's positions, because she knows one of the last places they were at was the zoo. So But either way, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.